As the 2024 election enters its final week, candidates across America are making their final pitch to voters. And joining me now is the Democratic candidate for governor of Montana, Ryan Busse. Ryan, thanks for coming on the show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I am driving all over, just like going to do my 167th event tonight
Wow.
in Missoula, driving to Missoula, and I put on about 135,000 miles. So here you capture me tonight in a car driving to an event because that's not an uncommon place for me to be.
Fair enough. Well, let me get right into it. As you've been traveling all around the state, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that maybe the one of the top things you've been hearing a lot about has been housing. I know that's been the number one
Yeah,
topic for people here in Missoula, where I live. I
yeah.
know that you've spent a lot of time talking about property taxes as you've been critiquing the policies of the current Gianforte administration, who is the current Republican governor of our state. You spent a lot of time talking about property taxes, but I want to talk about renters, like specifically, really quickly, if that's okay.
Yep.
Prices are very high for renters in our states. Wages are not really keeping pace. So a lot of people are falling behind. People are being forced to live with roommates longer than they want to. People's incomes, 50, 60, 70% of their incomes are going to rent in some cases, picking up multiple jobs. People have to move out of the state just to deal with what's happening here in Montana. So my question to you is, how do you address the financial burdens that Montana renters are facing, and what plans would you put forth to address the housing crisis here in Montana for renters?
You bet. So you're right. We hear about property taxes everywhere, and actually, renters have been slammed with the property tax thing worse than homeowners. The reason that is because the governor developed these what we call red tape rebates. Right, there's some one-time rebates that apply to property taxes, about $675. The deal with all rental properties, not a single one got any one of those rebates. And
Hmm.
so, if folks have felt their rent creep up or jump up in the last year and a half, which almost every renter has, you can start by blaming those property tax increases because the people who own those properties got those increases. They didn't get any rebate. And so we've been told time and time and time again about how rental properties were affected by the property tax increases, and that forced rental rates up. Now, that's not, as you note in your question, that's not the only reason that rental rates are more expensive. We do have this housing affordability crisis.
Yeah.
There's a few things that, yeah, I guess want to point out that I think that every time the governor has an opportunity to push a button and make things easier for working folks, he neglects to do it or chooses not to do it. And every time he has the opportunity to push a button and make things easier for wealthy folks, I mean, he's a billionaire who owns four mansions, so
Yeah.
he's not really having to deal with rental rates. But here's some things we can do. The state has passed in previous sessions. Bipartisan majorities have passed low income housing credits that we tried to get funded in the last legislative session. The governor refuses to use those, refused to fund them. That's a program that both Republicans and Democrats have passed, have supported, and we should be using to help lower rental rates now. We're not using them. He refuses to fund them. We do need to be building more housing. I think we need to make sure that we're focusing on the people who need the housing, not just doing. I think the governor often focuses on developers, like how do we make developers more wealthy or make it easier for them to make more money. Rafe and I, my running mate and I, don't really. We're not focused on the developer profit side of it. We're focused
Yeah.
on how do we get more people in more affordable housing. So I just want folks to know every time we have a chance to push a button, that's what we're going to be doing.
So, kind of like going along that lines a little bit, living in places like Missoula or Bozeman, it's not really uncommon to hear stories of folks have to pay like hundreds of dollars more in rent, like upon their renewal. I mean, I've heard these stories just
Oh yeah.
in my friends' lives here. It feels like an untenable thing to maintain as time goes along. And, because of that fact, we are seeing tenants unions pop up in Missoula, in Bozeman, trying to find ways to protect some of these renters from these outrageous kind of hikes. So the one thing I wanted to ask you is, do you do you have a certain laws you would put in place to protect renters from these price hikes? And do you support tenants unions in general?
So I think first off, I want to agree with you. What is going on in our communities, especially I live in Kalispell or just outside of Kalispell. So
Mhm.
um, we cannot have communities where the people who make the communities go can't afford to live there, and we're rapidly heading towards that. I mean, we have nurses and retail workers and cops and firefighters and carpenters and like these people can't afford to rent homes in the places that they make go. So I
Yeah.
completely hear that. Rafe and I don't have a position yet on the union side of things, but I think we want to. I just want you to know we err on the side of supporting policies that make it easier on working folks, including especially in organizing. And so I think without having taken time to examine that particular thing and having a policy paper on it, I just want the folks to know that we do that's where our heart is. Our heart is with making it easier on working folks, more affordable.
So on the national level, there's a Congressman Ro Khanna who's introduced his Stopped Wall Street Landlords Act, which he
Yeah.
is hoping will aim to reduce the role of private equity in the housing market here across the country. We're going to put this up on the screen really quick. This is something from notice.org, where he noted that in the first half of 2024, 1 in 4 low price homes were purchased by investors. This is according to Redfin. At the same time, Americans had a high degree of discern about the housing costs rose to 69%. Now, if passed, Khanna's bill would increase taxes on future home acquisitions made by companies and private equity that hold over 100 million in assets and bar government-supported lenders from backing new mortgages and such purchases. Now, Khanna argued that this preventing these large institution investors from treating housing as a speculative asset would ease the affordability crisis where demand for housing has already outstripped the supply. So what I'm wondering here is, would you support something like this in the state of Montana? Would you pass something like this if you had the opportunity to?
So I think his bill is a damn good one. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know every single particular, but I don't, federal legislation. I don't want to say I support or don't support every single word of it, but man, the tenor and the aim of that, I'm 100% with this
Yeah.
idea that private equity, especially big publicly traded corps, are coming in here and treating housing like an asset from which to profit instead of a necessity for folks who live in the state, frankly pisses me off. And so I'd love to do what we can here to limit the influence of private equity on housing. Love it.
Okay. So I had a few folks reach out to me on Instagram. They wanted to submit some questions to you today. And I had one person reach out in particular who asked, exactly how do we increase teacher pay and find affordable housing for them, hire more teachers where it's so necessary. He specifically was talking about places like Helena, Kalispell, Great Falls. I, went to school here in Montana. I came to Montana. I was 15 years old, went to high school at CMR in Great Falls. I had a really great experience in the public school system here, and it really kind of upsets me a lot to think that some of these people who are teachers in the public school system are basically constantly on the brink of poverty
Yeah.
just to stay in these schools, just to take care of the kids, just to teach people. What exactly can be done, and what is currently not being done right now to invest into our public schools?
So you're absolutely right. And I mean, we've heard heartbreaking stories about education, and Rafe and I are huge public education advocates. In fact, I believe it's the backbone of our democracy. I think we have to not, and there aren't very many places in the country that have the right to an equal and well-funded public education written into their constitution. Montana is one of those that was written in 1972. So this is a place where the opportunity afforded by public education is hugely important. And I think we're either at or about ready to break over the point where we're in constitutional violation, and meaning we're not providing an equal public education to our kids. And a large part of that is because of teacher pay. We have the
Mhm.
51st worst entry level teacher pay in the country. 51st. A territory beat us. And that's not forgivable. Meanwhile, we had a $2.6 billion surplus in this last legislative session. We had 1,004 teacher vacancies. And again, we had a $2.6 billion surplus. Did we fix any of that? No, not really. Here's one thing that we could do. School districts are saddled with this law passed largely by Republican majorities that says school district budgets can only increase about 3% a year. That's written
Mhm.
into the state law. Well, what happens when your energy costs at a school go up 21%, or your busing costs go up 18%, or right, all these costs that go up? Well, you know what's going to take it in the shorts? That's going to be teacher pay, and that's what we have now. We've forced all of these districts to cut, cut, cut. And one of the things they always go to, because they're saddled with this 3% increase law, is they have to cut teacher pay or limit teacher pay. Um, I think that's wrong. Our teachers ought to be not just making a living wage. Like, a lot of public school teachers are heroes in my book. I've seen the heroic work they do, and if we are really serious about providing our kids an equal opportunity and equal public education, then we got to pay our teachers. I was just in Bozeman not very long ago, and the Bozeman school system is recruiting from Montana State kids who can still live with their parents in Bozeman. That's how they're recruiting
Wow.
teachers, because they know that the teachers can't afford to live in Bozeman. Like, that is not right. Um,
No.
so um, Two things: we want to repeal that law, and Rafe and I want to get in and work with Republicans, do everything we can to modernize our school funding, because we are falling behind here, and I think it's a crisis coming down the pike. We just laid off 72 teachers in Missoula, 50
Yeah.
some in Helena. Like, it's a disaster coming. It's not right, and we owe our kids better than that.
Right. And let's actually go a little bit more macro with affordability here, because we've talked about affordability with housing and now how, teachers are being affected, but this is actually affecting everyone all over the state. I mean, when you go into specifically places like Missoula or Bozeman, if you're not working in like tech or finance or legal, I mean, people
Yep.
who work in the service industry, for instance, they are struggling to tread water right now in
Yep.
this state.
Yep.
And a lot of people are trying to figure out how they're going to survive. And so what exactly can be done to address the financial like burdens that everyone is feeling across the board right now? Because a lot of people are wondering, like how much more they can honestly take before they have to just leave Montana altogether.
Yeah, and we're at a tipping point, and Governor Gianforte likes to tout the fact that we have lots of jobs in Montana. I'm like, yeah, well, you need three of them to be able to live in Bozeman.
That's
Um,
true.
I mean, and it's just this thing has we have pushed it so far that we're pushing folks out of the towns they service. Look, we had a historic opportunity with this big surplus. And what did Gianforte do with it? Largely gave it away to big corporations and wealthy folks in the form of tax breaks. I think that was wrong. Um, I think that we should be taking the opportunity to shore up our teachers, to look for creative ways to make things more affordable, like funding low income housing credits. We're going to have another surplus in this next legislative cycle. I sure hope that we don't give Gianforte another opportunity to screw this up. Um, there are creative ways. We shouldn't. I'm not going to lie to you. A governor can't come in and push one button and just fix all this.
Right.
That's not the way it works. But through a series of decisions where you are always focused on making things more affordable for working people instead of just rushing out. Northwestern Energy, our big, basically energy conglomerate, our energy company for Western Montana, the Western 2/3 of Montana, they got a $36 million tax break. Why are they made $186 million in 2022? Why are we giving them a $36 million tax break with money we could be using? So another idea I have: there are now creative housing communities across the state, largely funded by philanthropy right now.
Yeah.
There's Bridgerview in Bozeman. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but a private philanthropy comes in, funds half of the homes there. A land trust helps acquisition this land. Half of the homes are then sold at half of market value. There's 64 homes in this little community.
Right.
Why isn't the state funding things like that, getting creative, helping fund more affordable housing? Again, I don't know why we're giving tens of millions of dollars away to big corporations, wealthy people, when we have people who can't afford to live in their towns. I want to find creative solutions like that.
Very true. And kind of speaking on the back of affordability a little bit here, I want to talk to a little bit about Medicaid, which we have seen I would say a disinterest from the current the
Yeah,
current administration for wanting to invest into it.
or
People.
antipathy, or just
Right.
outright hatred for it. But yeah,
Right. So, people in Montana, have to rely on this for a variety of different reasons: doctor visits, psychologist visits, dental visits. If you have to go to the emergency room, I know plenty of people in my life who have had to use Medicaid at some point or
absolutely.
another. And, healthcare, wouldn't be available otherwise to a lot of these people. This is actually from the Daily Montana here. I'm going to put this up on the screen really quick. Montana has expanded Medicaid here in 2015 and then renewed it again for an expansion in 2019. But the expanded portion of the program will expire in June if lawmakers do not choose to renew it again in 2025. And we have a little graphic here for how many people in Montana in every single county are
Yep.
using Medicaid currently, which is a significant amount across the entire state. So my question for you is, what exactly would you do to bolster Medicaid? And, how else would you address healthcare access for the people of Montana?
Two things. You're right. We expanded Medicaid, and when we did that, we did it when we had a Democratic governor. Steve Bullock was governor, and he partnered with Republicans in the legislature. Good Republicans who want to do the right thing. They need some cover fire right now. They don't have it because they have a Republican governor who often sides with the most extreme part of his party.
Yeah.
They all do not. They all do not want to expand Medicaid again. They've said that. The governor refuses to say what he's going to do. Look, people who are watching this should know Medicaid is just health insurance. It's just health insurance for good working people. That's what it is. And Governor Gianforte he either wants it to go away, which will cost people substance abuse care, mental health care, ambulance care, all of those things. And it will make everybody's health care less affordable. It will make it less attainable. In Eastern Montana, there will be clinics shut down. There will be more rest homes shut down. In the rest of the state, everything will be more expensive and your basic services will be in peril. It's a 90-10 federal split, right? The federal government pays 90% of the cost, state government
Right.
pays 10%, and it pays for / subsidizes tons of stuff that people depend on. And it gives good working folks who need health insurance. It gives them coverage when they need it. So many of the people that are on it are just working people who, because of this affordability crisis, they can't afford health care yet. They're the ones painting your house. They're the
Yeah.
ones working in a restaurant. Like, these are working people, and we owe it to them. So I want everybody to know we're going to fight hard to get Medicaid expanded again or renewed. We have to do it, because if we don't, like I said, it's going to be a healthcare disaster for the state. Second thing, this governor kicked 136,000 people off of Medicaid, off their health insurance through this
Yeah.
redetermination process after COVID. We had the highest rate of childhood disenrollment in Medicaid in the nation because he kicked 36,000 kids off Medicaid, off their health insurance. Who kicks kids off of health insurance? Who does that? Um, that just furthers the affordability crisis. Now you have another family whose kid isn't covered. They can't make the rent. It's just like these are just dominoes that keep falling. So I just want folks to know we are going to go to the mat and fight like crazy to get Medicaid expansion renewed again. We have to do it. We'll partner with good Republicans to do it. We're going to have to do that because we'll probably have a Republican-controlled legislature. But we hope there's going to be a governor and lieutenant governor in the office who will stand up for working folks and call on Republicans to do the right thing for them. Medicaid's a big deal.
So my final question for you is kind of focusing on just voting at large. I speak to a lot of people on a week in and week out basis online in my real life. Uh, People talking about this upcoming election and how they're feeling about the election. And unfortunately, for people down here at the state level, there's a lot of trickle down, unfortunately, how people are feeling about the race at the national level. A lot of people seem to be a little dejected by the state of our politics right now. With that being said, the largest block of voters in America every year are not Democratic voters or Republican voters, but they're actually people who choose not to vote whatsoever. And I'm wondering, for you specifically, when you're making these final rounds here, in the last week or so of this election, how are you approaching people who still have not voted yet or on the fence or thinking about not voting at all? Like, what is your pitch to those people who are feeling really apathetic about the 2024 election?
Well, we live in Montana, and it's a magic place to live. And there's a fabric here, and people understand the fabric that equalizes our opportunity. That's why so
Mhm.
many folks want to live here. Public education is a huge deal. We talked about that. Our public lands and access to rivers is a huge deal. There aren't many places where a kid with a pair of $15 used beat up Chuck Taylors and a $39 fly rod can go down and hop in a river and have a world class fly fishing experience, right? But we may struggle sometimes to live in our towns, but we can do that here, and that's a big deal. So we're resonating with voters on these sorts of issues. And also, the tax increase thing is a monster. It's hit renters and it's hit homeowners. It's pushed elderly people out of their homes. It's made the affordability crisis worse. And people have been told for 75 years that Republicans will never raise their taxes, yet this governor raised their taxes. He made the affordability crisis worse.
Yeah.
And all of this sways undecided voters because this all plays into this fabric in Montana where we don't pull rank on each other, where we have not yet made this a place where there's just a single path for wealthy people and a lesser path for everybody else. We still have that fabric here where people have opportunity and can succeed, but we better salvage it. We better fight for working people. We better reduce property taxes. We better fight for Medicaid. We better fight for river access and public lands access, all these things. We don't fight for them now, they're going to be gone. And we're going to be like other states where we don't have this really cool fabric of equalization. So that sways voters, and we mean it when we say it. Now, and I want to hit too, we've got a governor who has really rabidly attacked the right to privacy and the right to medical freedom for women, the right to an abortion.
Yeah.
I think it's weird that a governor wants to be in your doctor's office with you, telling you what you can and can't do. In fact, I think it's really creepy. That's not who we are. We believe in the rights of women and all people in this state to have their own right to privacy. We're proud of that, and we'll fight for it, and we'll veto any of these dangerous bills that he signed into law.
Okay. Ryan Busse, thank you so much for coming on the show today. For people who are wanting to learn more about your campaign and you, where can they find you at online?
So we're running one of the coolest campaigns in the country, really are. Go online, you can see us at Busse for Montana, or follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Instagram handles Ryan D. Busse. Really cool stuff. You're going to laugh. We've got a kick-ass social media feed. It's funny. It's informative. It's serious. We mean what we say. We're fighting for this place. It's a good follow. Thanks for having me today. And yeah, I'll see you down in Missoula here in about 30 minutes.
All right. Well, for those who are interested, the links for those will be in the episode description. So go ahead and click in there now and you will see those links. Thank you to everyone who watched our episode today, and we will see you in the next one.
Thanks, Desmond.
Thank you for watching this video of Independent Thought. If you liked the conversation, please go ahead and give the video itself a like, and be sure to subscribe for future episodes on the channel.